Welcome to Financial Fitness. I'm your host, Philip Board, along with
Mia Medina.
Let's dive into today's topic. I hope you enjoy it.
So you talked about the living trust, revocable, irrevocable, an estate.
Basically, an estate is just the assets. If somebody passes away, it's a way of saying, like, if you were to do a balance sheet, your net worth while you're alive, it's your net worth statement. Once you're dead, it's your estate. Those assets are your estate. But you know what I think we need to talk about is how they come up with the cost of probate.
Okay.
So why you would want to trust over not, right? So let's just say, let's be a little obscene, right? So while you're alive, let's say you own $1 million house with a $500,000 mortgage, which in Southern California is not out of the question, right? And you've got $500,000 in an IRA, and you have $1 million worth of death benefit, life insurance, right? $1 million worth of life insurance. And let's say it's term, so there's no cash value, right? So while you're alive, your assets are the equity in your house and the $500,000 in your IRA, right? So your net worth while you're alive is $1 million because it's your assets minus liabilities. The life insurance has no value while you're alive. Once you pass away, the way a lot of lawyers do it, I'm not saying all, but some, they will say, what is your total value? So they will look at the house at $1 million. They will look at the life insurance as another $1 million and the $500,000 IRA. So dead, to them, you are worth $2.5 million. Now, why is this conversation critical? The question is, how do they price probate? Now, I know there's grading schedules, but if you go from 2 to 6%, let's just pick on 4% of your estate. While you're alive, you think 4% of $1 million, it's 40 grand. Once you pass away, it's $100,000 that the courts and the lawyers will charge. And that's coming off about a 4%. Maybe it's a little less, maybe it's more. $100,000. Now, you can take $500,000 off the top of the $2.5 million that your heirs aren't going to get because that was debt. So now they're down to $2 million, but they're paying $100,000 to get the $2 million when 3 of those items actually had beneficiaries on them. So stuff that you really don't want to do. So what does a trust cost? Oh, $2,500 one time, and now your family doesn't have to pay a lawyer $100,000.
Now, we've seen a lot of clients that try to get their trust online.
Oh,
where
yeah.
it's cheaper.
Yeah.
What do you usually see being the problem when we do come across trust that I guess weren't implemented or were instructed by a fill in the blank type of system?
I know you're asking, that's a loaded question because I know you know firsthand what that's about. So we do see this. And not all trusts are created equal. I've seen trusts that are $10,000. And I've seen trusts that are, I got it for $400 off the web. What's the difference between the $10,000 and the $400? I would argue there's a substantial difference, but I think once it gets over about $3,500, there's not a whole lot of difference unless you're worth many millions of dollars. If you're worth over $20 million, or actually I'd even say if you're over worth $10 million right now, then yeah, you need to do additional planning, which is going to be outside of the normal living trust realm. The online versions tend to be just the trust document. So people pay for this document, they fill it out, who gets what, when, where, why, and that's it. They don't fund their house, meaning they don't re-register the name, the title at the county in the name of their trust. So the trust isn't in there. They don't go to the bank and put the bank accounts in there. What's even worse is there are no powers of attorney or a pour-over will. Go ahead, ask me, what's a pour-over will?
What is a pour-over will?
What a great
then?
question. I thought you'd never ask. So inside a trust, a pour-over will is a document that basically says, I meant to put this asset in my trust while I was alive, but I forgot. So it allows the executor, the successor trustees after you're gone, to pull in that asset. Now there's a caveat for it. Got to be about $160,000, I think, under current law on that. So they can do it with something called an SS 13100, which is an estate tax document, and it allows them to bring that into the trust without going through probate.
So anything that maybe mom or dad would have missed.
Yeah,
to add.
Maybe there was a little bank account somewhere. We've seen it where there was, we don't see this very much anymore. It's been years actually. Stock certificates. They used to issue stock certificates, and it's in dad's name only. And it's, I don't know, it was 10 shares of Chevron or whatever it is. It's worth, $25,000. Well, that's something that you can pull in using a pour-over will, which is part of the trust. So the components you want are the trust document. That is the who gets what, when, where, and who is going to be in charge in what order upon your death. So, and by the way, that doesn't have to be death. So if you lose incapacity, so in my mom and dad's case, right, mom's starting to fade a little bit on the memory, my dad's still there, I will step up and be co-trustee with my dad. Okay. So that's not necessarily that they die to do that. You can be living and do that as well. So you want the pour-over will, the trust document, healthcare powers of attorneys for both parties involved, durable power of attorneys for both parties involved. So you're like, oh, I can get those online too. Now, we own another business called One-on-One Elder Care, shameless plug, I'll put it out there. And what it specializes in working with the elder population on getting them the care they need, whether it be assisted living, in-home care, skilled nursing care, or whatever it is. And a lot of times there's memory issues involved with that. So one of the first things we look at is the power of attorney, who's in control of that. And I can tell you not all powers of attorney, especially durable, are created equal. It used to be that it could be like 2 or 3 pages and there's a list of all the different things and there's initials that says all of the above. We have had financial institutions reject them because the specific thing we needed to do was not explicitly implied. So now we make sure that our powers of attorney, they're initialed the whole way down and they're much more robust to allow us to do some of the things that we can do with estate planning and trust planning to get the care needed. Sometimes we have to sell a house. Okay, well, who's in control of that? Well, that's where the durable power of attorney comes in, and it allows that person to do so. So,
thank you.
Welcome. You know, I used to hear this one a lot, a codicil. This was thrown at me a long time ago, and I'm like, what is that? A codicil is basically an amendment to an existing will or trust. People love to use words like that because they think it's something really cool.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
I have. I had a client that was throwing that around. Let's talk about, how about a guardianship, right? So what we see, this one a lot is guardianship or conservatorship, right? So if we've got a senior citizen with a memory issue, somebody says, oh, I'm just going to get conservatorship over them. I'm going to do that. Well, yeah, it can be done. I can't quote pricing, but from my recollection, I want to say it's going to cost you about $25,000, take about 6 months to do. And I'm sure there's some lawyers out there going, no, he's wrong or whatever. But either way, it's going to be money that you probably don't have since you're trying to take care of somebody. And then you've got to go before a judge with an attorney, and they're going to appoint an attorney and a judge to oversee how you spend the money for them. So now every time you want to do something, there's these other people that are not family members involved. So I would argue that while if you think that you've got a senior citizen who's got a little bit of a memory problem, I would suggest that you act quickly and go get the trust done, because there's a difference between, and we've had this happen, we've had clients come to us and say, oh, dad's out of it. He doesn't remember what. The legal definition of not being competent to sign and the family's version are often two different things. So let the lawyers decide if that's something that can be done. And realistically, as long as they know their name, what year it is, their age, date of birth, who the president is, some questions like that, that's usually enough to have them say, okay, they are cognitive enough, they are lucid enough to sign this document. But that's for attorneys. Any case like that, we make sure that the delivery is done by the attorney, and we don't do that at all.
Now, does that apply to, say, both parents pass away and there's minors involved?
Excellent. So minors are an interesting one, right? So in my family, and I'm going to pick on me for this one. So my wife and I are in our 50s. I know, sorry, hon. I know you don't like people to know that because you look younger, but we're both in our 50s. Our children are under the age of 18. And our closest family is my sister, who's never had any children, lives in Northern California with my parents. I'm wrong. I love my sister, but she has no clue on how to be a parent. She just doesn't, right? My parents are both in their 80s. I've already talked about my mom. She's not doing so good. My dad probably do a pretty good job of keeping up, but not the best choice. My brother-in-law, love the guy to death, single, ex-military, comes and goes as he pleases. If we see him on Christmas, we're grateful to see him, but we can't tell if he's ever going to be there. So again, somebody not that I want raising my children. So without a trust document, those are the people that a judge will look for to say, well, this is family. That's where you're going to go. And my kids will be pushed in that direction. Who we chose is some friends around the corner from us. They raised two of the most amazing human beings. One of them is actually, I think she might end up finding a cure for cancer at some point. She's already gone through, she's getting her, I think she's onto her doctorate at this point, just passed her MCATs, went to Berkeley, went to Harvard, master's at Yale. I mean, just super smart. The other one is actually going to child psychology. And it's all associated with just great parenting, right? So we asked them, would you be the caretakers of our children if we pass away? And they agreed to do so. But we have split the money from the children. So, and I know that was a loaded question because you knew this already. So Mia is the trustee of the money for my children, whereas our friends will be the caretakers of the children. The reason I did that, it wasn't that I didn't think Mia was not qualified to take care of my children. It's just that we don't have that kind of a relationship. We have more of a business relationship, even though we've known each other forever. Friends, but primarily business. And what that means, though, is that if my friends need to buy a bigger house, they can do it with my children's money, and the house will remain in my children's name in trust for them. And my friends can live in it with them as long as they want. Rent out their own house, do whatever. They can do that. So we have this check and balance. So naming someone, especially if it's outside the family, because I want to make sure my kids are adopted. I want to make sure that they have their friends and they have their surroundings that they used to being around, because I don't want to disrupt their lives by not only losing their parents, but now being forced to lose all of their friends as well. So minor children is it's not who you always wanted to be. And if I'm talking to one partner or the other, I always say, look, you might have your idea. your wife might have another idea.
That is very true.
And you need to work that out because you need to choose. And I don't, go discuss it. So yeah, guardians for children upon death is important. Now, officially, children become the age of majority at 18 years old, which means they could have all the money at 18. However, a trust can stipulate that they don't get the money until milestones are met. So it might be that my children don't get some of their money until they graduate with a 4-year degree, right? Or if maybe they turn 30, or maybe there's a stipends that they get, they can use the funds before 30 for buying a house, for starting a business, getting married. There's grandchildren involved, then maybe it's supporting the grandchildren. You can build all this into the language with that. So it's not like they turn 18 and say, I'm taking the money and run, because had I had that kind of money when I was 18, I would not have. I'd have bought the fastest car I'd buy, and I'd probably be dead by the time I was 19.
I like that you're able to still have somewhat control over what you want your funds that you work so hard for.
Yeah.
After, even especially when you have kids involved, because you never know.
Agreed, right? So there's another thing that we see quite a bit, and that is, if your kids are 50 years old, don't put those kind of things in place. They're 50. If they're a screw up at 50, nothing you can do is going to fix that. Right. So, I would use that up till about age 30. But after that, it's like, okay, you got to make it break it on your own. You're either going to blow it all. I'll be dead. I'm not going to be there to judge. Somebody might argue some other people might be there to judge. But, control from the grave is only good to a certain degree. I mean, we had a case where the dad, who was 84, put a special needs trust in place for his 60-year-old daughter, just because he didn't agree with how she liked to spend her money. That was it. And it became a total pain in the backside for everybody involved. So, control from the grave is there's got to be a limit on it. We did have one where there was a much younger child than an older child, and the older children weren't going to be allowed to get any money until the youngest one graduated college.
Oh, that would add a lot of encouragement.
Or pressure.
Or pressure, too.
So one of the other things I see is, this might be a little controversial, right? So, and this actually happened in my own family. And it was, I think my mom told me this story about my grandfather, right? My mom and dad were successful. They owned their own business. They were prosperous and they did well. We ended up emigrating here to the United States when I was 14, right? My aunt, my mom's sister, she wasn't a ne'er-do-well. She just wasn't a go-getter. She just had a job. And so my grandfather said, well, I'm going to leave all of our money to your sister, my aunt. And my mom said, whoa, wait a minute. I did everything you told me to do. I went to school. I started the business. I became successful. And now your parting wish for me is I get nothing from you. And that's not right. So I've told this story to clients when this comes up because it's not fair. And you don't want to be, your most successful child is now the one that is completely ignored upon your passing. So I would argue that it's 50-50. It's even distribution, unless there's some other reason why, right? And even in my own family, and this is now passing through, I am significantly more successful than my sister. But my parents have chosen to split 50-50, which I'm grateful for. Now, I know I'll always be there for my sister and I'll help her out no matter what. So it's a non-issue. I don't need their money. But it's nice to know that I was valued equally.
Sometimes I feel like it's the principle,
It is the principle,
right?
right? And that's where we see people fumble quite a bit. So
Now, what do you think about this? Is actually a very interesting one because some people might think it's silly, but some people are really passionate about it. Adding pets into their trust.
wow. So pets, let's see here.
Or say someone that doesn't have any kids and they're very passionate about their pets.
We see this a bit. So there are actually, I hear about this often, but now there is, we actually have an account that we can set up that's essentially a charitable remainder trust. And you need to ask me what that is in a minute. But basically, it's an account that money goes into upon the passing of the pet owner, the trustee, maybe $25,000, right? That is there for the pet's care, for the pet's food, medical, whatever that pet's needs. So you end up with your mom's dog, you now have the resources to give that dog the absolute best care possible.
Which is very important for some people.
Right? It is, right? Now, what happens when the dog passes away, though, right?
Good
In this
question.
case, because it's a charitable remainder trust, whatever's left in that account will go to a charity of choice. And generally you see it's a dog rescue or it's the SPCA or something like that. So, or maybe there's I know here in Claremont, we've got some pets where you can adopt rescued pets, or maybe it's to a no-kill shelter or something like that. So the money is able to pass through to ultimately a good cause.
I love that. I feel like I would have to add something like that just because I have a lot of animals and it would not be fair to leave that burden on someone else.
Meanwhile, your son's like, Mom, really? You've got 24 animals and I'm left with $2? But yeah, good point, right? It's a nice way of doing that. So go ahead, ask me the question. Do you remember the question?
What is a charitable remainder trust?
Okay, so a charitable remainder trust is something where you can put money into this trust while you're alive. Now, if it's structured properly, you can get a tax deduction for doing so, right? So maybe you've got a significantly larger estate and it's like, I'm going to pay estate taxes on this to the tune of 54%, right? So $1 million over, I'm going to give $540,000 to the feds, or I can put $1 million over here and get a tax deduction for it against my current income. So there's a tax benefit to do it. But then the money goes in there. So a charitable remainder trust would be that upon your passing, that money would go to the charity of your choice. There's other types of trusts. Charitable lead trust is another one. Charitable income trust.
So that would all have to be established separately, right? I can't have a charitable remainder trust inside the living trust.
No, those are separate.
Or referenced. It has to be established as two different ones.
Yeah, those would be
Okay.
two separate trusts. You would be the grantor of that charitable trust, whatever it is. And there's all kinds of planning on that. I would say it's a deeper dive than I want to get into on this conversation, because what I want people to understand is most of the people out there, if you have a house, you've got kids and a bit of money, which most of us do, you should get a trust. It's not scary. It's pretty simple. What's scary is you don't understand the words of what
Or
they mean.
putting it on paper sometimes, having to think about it. Having to
Right.
think about, okay, this is going to happen. And sometimes I feel like people don't want to face their own death,
Right?
but we're all going there. So
Yeah, and-
better have something in place when that happens.
Yeah. And I can tell you from, I love that when I go to sleep at night. Oh no, this is a good one. Okay. True story. We were in Kauai
Oh, I remember this one.
during the missile crisis, right? Remember the incoming missile? Remember that? It's like the big scare. Somebody leaned on the wrong button but the sirens were going off. And I will tell you, laying in my hotel room early in the morning, after a late night the night before, what I heard was the Amber Alert siren, because that's the only time I'd ever heard it. It was my phone going off. It was on the charger across the room. And I'm like, well, I don't have a rental car. I'm not going to be out. I feel bad for the child. What it was incoming missile. And we finally heard over the loudspeaker in the hotel room that, hey, make your way to the lobby. We're going to get everyone into the basement, which honestly will freak you out.
You think.
And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, I should call my daughter. My daughter at the time, I want to say, was 4, 5, or 6. And we had just left the day before. We're supposed to be here for a week, or be in Kauai for a week. And I thought about calling her and telling her how much I loved her. And no matter what happens, we'll be here forever. We'll always be present, right? And it dawned on me that all that would do is scare the living daylights out of her. I kissed her the day before. I told her I loved her. And I knew that my trust was in the office, in your hands. You knew where the life insurance was. She would be financially fine. I chose not to scare the bejeebies out of her. Fortunately, it was a big old scare. Nothing came of it. But it was really nice knowing that okay.
Give you that peace of mind.
It was tremendous peace of mind. And I can tell you other people that were there at the same time as me did not have that calmness about them. So peace of mind, it's really easy to get.
People don't want to wait till they come across an event like that kind of forces them to think about it.
Yeah.
Right? Being on top of it, I feel like it's, you always want to be on top of it.
Always. Indeed. If you have children and people you care about, whether it's parents, right? If you're helping take care of your parents, you should have a trust to make sure that they are continued to take care of, right? And we see that more and more, where the kids are significantly more successful than the parents, and now the kids are taking care of mom and dad. Well, who's your successor? Let's talk about process. How does this work? For us, there's different ways. You can contact an attorney and go and visit with them. They'll give you a trust intake, and you fill out a form, and they'll ask you questions, and then they'll draft the trust for you. We've been doing this for a really long time, so we actually help the attorneys that we work with, and we actually sit down with you and have this conversation that we've just had, answering your questions. And we do the intake, and we send that to the attorney, and the attorney then makes a phone call to you, or you can meet them in person if you like, and have a conversation about the deeper depths. And usually it goes, did they describe this to you? Is this what you intend to have happen at these different points in your life? You say yes. They'll start drafting the trust. They'll send you a brief document making sure that all of your beneficiaries' names are spelled correctly and the right percentages go where. And once you approve that, we actually go as far as printing and binding the trust on behalf of our attorney partners. And we have notaries in-house. And if you're a client of ours, we then go right there that day. We re-register your accounts in the name of the trust to make it as seamless as possible. So pretty seamless, pretty easy to do. If you've got any questions, reach out to us here. We have some links on here. The smarter people than me that are filming us and editing this, we'll put that in place. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next episode of Financial Fitness. Thank you very much, Mia.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for joining us at Financial Fitness with Mia Medina.
And Philip Board.
I hope you found the topics interesting and hope to see you next time.
Terrific. And if you've got any questions, they can always hit the website, www.oneononefinancial.com, or hit the links below.